Welcome to video number 13. My name is Reimar Vettner. We have come to the end of this quarter. This is the last video tutorial that I'm making this time about how to use the Logos Bible software to prepare for the Sabbath School lesson. Maybe we'll do something similar again next year when there is another quarterly on one of the New Testament books. Maybe we'll see. But thank you for following me so far this quarter. In today's video, we are going to talk about the political situation at the time of Jesus' death. The last Sabbath now is talking about the trial and death of Jesus. And I will leave it to you to use the different commentaries in Logos, the different guides here, passage guide, sermon starter guide, and so on, and go through the different chapters of the end of Luke 22, 23, 24, and get the spiritual lessons out of those passages. Maybe read a little bit in Ellen White's Desire of Ages, the last few chapters. But I want to spend this quick video about the political situation at the time of Jesus' trial, because that can be a little bit confusing for a lot of people who haven't looked into it. So we're going to use Logos to dig into who was ruling where at the time of Jesus. Jesus, meets a lot of people during his final trial. He talks to the high priest, we have the Sanhedrin, we have Herod, Pontius Pilate. Who are all these people? So let's begin with the fact book. We go to Tools, we find the fact book, and then let's type in Herod Antipas. Herod Antipas. Alright, he is the Herod that is mentioned in Luke 23, when Jesus goes to Pontius Pilate, then to Herod, and then back to Pontius Pilate. This is the Herod Antipas. He is a son of Herod the Great. Now, the Herodian family can be quite complex. So, let's go down to the family tree. If you search down or you scroll down, library results, at some point you will see a family tree. Yep. So find the family tree. Well, you might get several. Let's take this one made by Logos. Biblical people diagrams. So this is a few of the figures in the big famous family of the Herods. Herod the Great is the one who started the show. He was originally just a governor for the Romans in Galilee when he asked and got permission to become king of the Jews, and he took his army and invaded Judea and Jerusalem, and he became king of Israel, king of the Jews. He wasn't royal by birth. He wasn't even properly Jewish in the eyes of the Jews. His family was Edomian, but his father had been forced to convert from the Edomian religion into the Jewish religion. So his family was a convert. Herod the Great was called the Great because he was building a lot of buildings all over Palestine and much of the Middle East around the Mediterranean Sea, in Greece and far away. So Herod the Great was really a great builder. Now he was the king who was chasing baby Jesus when Jesus was born, and the one who slaughtered all the babies in Bethlehem. Herod the King, paranoid. He had a lot of children. When he died in the year 403 BC, fairly soon after Jesus was born, Herod the Great died. Archelaus, his son, took over. He was a pretty brutal and bad king. He didn't last that long. Eventually he had to go into exile in what is today France. But he is the Herod, or is usually translated Archelaus in Matthew 2, when Joseph and Mary have to return from Egypt. They choose to go to Galilee because Archelaus was the king and he was pretty brutal. He had a brother called Herod Antipas here. So So these two were brothers by the same mother, Herod Antipas. Herod Antipas is the Herod that we're reading about in this week's story. At the trial of Jesus in Luke 23, this is the Herod Jesus is being sent to, Herod Antipas. And Jesus encounters him a couple of times in the Gospels. You probably remember Jesus calls him that fox, Antipas, that fox. Now he is part of Jesus' final trial. He was in charge of Galilee and Perea. I'm going to show you this on the map pretty soon. So Herod Antipas was not in charge of Judea at the time of Jesus. So what was Herod Antipas doing down in Jerusalem then during Jesus' trial, if he was not in charge of Judea? Well, we'll come back to that. There is a guy called Philip, who we should not confuse with Herod the Tetrarch, but he is another brother of Archelaus and Herod, or half-brother by another mother. He was married to Herodias, but Herod Antipas, that fox, decides to divorce his own wife and cause some political trouble, because the father of his wife, Herod Antipas' wife, wasn't too happy about that, the Nabatean king. So Herodias' father caused trouble for Herod Antipas. No, not Herodias. His first wife's father caused trouble when he married Herodias. And John the Baptist, of course, gave him a lot of trouble, because John the Baptist, just like any true and faithful Adventist pastor, he stood up and said, divorce and remarriage? No, this is not allowed. You can't just marry your brother's wife. So Herodias divorced Philip and married Herod Antipas. This is a pretty bad family. So if you want to read more about these different Herods, you can open the fact book, type in Herod Antipas, Herod the Great, and so on. And you can read the different articles in the dictionaries. And look at maybe some family trees, some coins show up. There is another Philip called Philip the Tetrarch, who is ruling the northeastern part, like Decapolis and other Greek and Syrian areas at the time. There are some coins after Philip. So if you want to read about all this, go to the fact book, type in Herod Antipas, Herod the Great, Philip the Tetrarch, and so on. If you want to read something from a specific writer, for instance, if you want to do some research on these people in Ellen White's writings, I'm going to show you how you can do that. A lot of you have got Ellen White's writings now, the last week or two, as her writings were released into the different SDA packages. I think it is from SDA Bronze and up. You should have Ellen White now. So, if you have updated logos and you've got Ellen White's writings in here, you want to make it into, you want to tag them. So, if you type author, you just open the library. Let me do this again, slowly. You click on library, this book icon, you drag it down so it fills the whole screen. You can choose which part of the screen, but let's just fill it up, the whole screen for now. Then we type author, colon, quotation mark, White, comma, Ellen, and that gives us a fair amount of books. Then you just click on one of them. Don't click on a title. If you click on the book title, that's a link and that will open the book. But if you click somewhere else, and then you do Control A for all, typical Windows command, keyboard shortcut, Control and A, or Command and A on the Mac, that selects all the books that the logo is found by Ellen White as author. Then you click on this eye icon, the information icon up in the right hand side, and here you can add tags. You see, yes, I have a lot of different tags here, but you just click on add tag, and maybe you want to have E.G. White as a tag. I also have her writings in Spanish since I've been teaching in Mexico for some years, but the English Ellen White writings, I just have the tag EGW. So you add that, and that adds Ellen White as a tag. In the library here, you can choose whatever columns you want to have. And if for some reason, if you don't have the column called My Tags, just right click somewhere up here on the headings, and you can select and unselect whatever columns you want. Make sure My Tags is selected if it isn't already. So, okay, so sorted by title, but you want to see the column My Tags. So you see that Ellen White or E.G. White is there. Now there are some books that Logos have given the E.G. White estate as author, written by Ellen White, and so you want to make sure that you have those books as well. So after you've tagged all these books I just mentioned with EGW, you might want to do another search in the library, author : quotation mark Ellen G. period White estate. That gives you the books by the author, Ellen G. White estate. Again, Control A, we'll click on one of the books. Control A selects all of them, and then you click on Add Tag, and you give them whatever tag you want. EGW is a convenient one. So now we have tagged all of Ellen White's books with E.G. White. Now we want to search her writings for words like Herod Antipas. So then you can close the library. You go to the search icon. You drag it down so you get a nice big window filling up the screen. I've been doing this before, so let me just go back to the beginning. Search, make sure you choose basic. Bible is to search just the Bible text. Media is to search for images, videos. Clause, morphology, syntax are grammatical searches in Greek and Hebrew. Go to basic. That's the basic way of searching your entire library. But now we want to search just Ellen White's writings. How do we do that? So you change this, search everything or search whatever you have. And now you just start typing in My Tag : E.G. White. Then it says, all right, you have so many resources with My Tag EGW. You can also, if you prefer that, you can also scroll down. Here you have all whatever tags you have in your library. If you've been tagging books, you can manually scroll and find your tag. If you haven't made that many tags yet, it should be a short list. But if you have a lot of tags, it might be easier just to type in My Tag : E.G. White. And now we're ready to do our search. We can maybe do Herod the Great. And remember, whenever you have more than one word, which is supposed to be a phrase, like Herod the Great, you don't want to have search results for all the times it finds Herod, and all the times it finds the, and all the times it finds great. Because there are a lot of articles and books about great, which is not about Herod the Great. So make sure you put Herod the Great in quotation marks as a phrase, and enter on the keyboard. And then you will get some places in Ellen White's writings where she talks about Herod the Great. Right, you can repeat for Herod the Tetrarch. Then if you do or as capital, or Antipas, you're going to find all the places in Ellen White's writings where you have the word Antipas or the phrase Herod the Tetrarch. This is Herod Antipas, who is in charge of Jesus' trial in Luke 23. The one who married his brother's wife, Herodias. So you can read what Ellen White says about him. If you want to search on this guy who was king for a little while when Joseph and Mary came back from Egypt, you just type in Archelaus, and you'll find a few hits about that. Archelaus, son of Herod the Great. Here are a couple of places. So this is a way to search and do some research on a topic in a collection of writings, like in this case, all the books tagged with Ellen White. Now I'd like to show you some maps here. There is one very cool map that unfortunately is not available for sale anymore, because it was made by Moody Press, and Moody Press and Logos have somehow got on bad terms. They haven't. Moody has pulled all their books out of the Logos system, so you can't buy them anymore. But if you bought them in the old days. You know, you still have the books you bought, but for the moment you can't buy any Moody books. They have disagreed on the financial terms and royalties and all that. Hopefully Moody Press will come back into the Logos system again. The new Moody Atlas of the Bible is a very nice one, and I'm bringing this map up because it has some nice color here. I couldn't find that in any other atlas in Logos, so I chose to use one that you probably don't have and can't even get, but just to show you very conveniently the political situation at the time of Jesus. Herod Antipas was in charge of this yellow area called Galilee on the western side of the river and the Sea of Galilee, and he was in charge of Perea, the pink area down here. That was the areas of Herod Antipas. That's what the Romans allowed him to rule over. Not Judea. Judea is not under any Jewish king at the time of Jesus' death. Judea is directly under the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. But Pontius Pilate doesn't live in Judea. He doesn't normally stay in Jerusalem. He stays up in this city called Caesarea up here. Caesarea Maritima by the Mediterranean Sea. This was the headquarters of Pontius Pilate. So what exactly was Pontius Pilate doing in Jerusalem then, during the story of Jesus' trial and death? Well, it was Passover, and the Romans always got very nervous during Passover, because what was the celebration of Passover? Well, it was commemoration of the Exodus of Egypt, when the Jews got their freedom from the Egyptians. So the Jews always got a little bit extra nationalistic during Passover, and some people were inspired to try to do a revolt against the Romans and get their freedom again, like they did freedom from the Egyptians. So Passover was a time of nervousness for the Romans, and the Romans moved in a lot of extra troops into Jerusalem. The governor himself, Pontius Pilate in this case, came to town, came to Jerusalem to watch over what was happening and give quick orders. But normally Pontius Pilate would live up in Caesarea. But Judea was directly under the Roman governor. It was not under any Jewish king. So Herod Antipas has Galilee, Perea, Pontius Pilate, direct control of Judea. Samaria had some kind of autonomy, but of course under the Romans. Philip the Tetrarch, not to be confused with the one who was originally married to Herodias. That was another Philip. Philip the Tetrarch was in charge of up here, and to some extent over Decapolis. So this eastern area here, the Greek and Syrian areas. Decapolis had a bit more self-control. They were kind of a federation of 10 Greek states that governed themselves more or less, but Philip was the closest one in charge. So this is the political situation at the time of Jesus' death, and a lot of people don't know this, don't know exactly what the situation is like. So I thought I should bring up this map for you, even though fortunately you probably cannot open it in your Logos. But let's find something else that you can see. I have some Logos resources for you that you can open. One of them is the ESV Study Bible. Now that doesn't come in a package, but ESV, it's a lot of you have it because it's one of the most popular books that Logos is selling, the ESV Study Bible. Here, let me open that one. So let's see, in the beginning of the book there is a list of illustrations. Let's go there. Jerusalem in the time of Jesus. Can we find that here? Alright, so this map, is it possible to see that any bigger? Let's do like this. Let's remove the table of contents just to make it as big as possible. This is a very nice picture. This is one of my favorite illustrations about Jerusalem at the time of Jesus. So if you don't already have the ESV Study Bible, I think it's like $30. It's a short little commentary. Goes very well together with the Adventist Andrew Study Bible notes. So if you want to have two quick commentaries, or more like Bible study notes, as you read through the Bible, get the ESV Study Bible and get the Andrew Study Bible, or you might already have the Andrew Study Bible in your SDA package. But this is a nice picture. This is, here we can see the temple. This is kind of from the southeast. Or south. Yeah, southeast. Looking north. Here on the eastern side, we have the Kedron Valley. We have Garden of Gethsemane over here. So this is where Jesus begins this week's story. He withdrew with his disciple to the Garden of Gethsemane, which is on the hill up to Mount of Olives, which you have here. And then we have the temple, and inside the temple you had a little room for the Sanhedrin, for the Jewish Supreme Court and the Jewish Parliament, the Sanhedrin. Then over here we have Herod the Great's palace, which probably was the place where Pontius Pilate was during the last trial. It could technically have been over here, just north of the temple. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing with my cursor. They had a fortress here, but Pontius Pilate himself would probably have been here in Herod the Great's palace. Then the question is, where was the high priest's house? Caiaphas, the high priest, well, that's a lot more uncertainty. It was somewhere here, probably in the western part, also called the Upper City. It was probably somewhere here, because this was the more richer part of Jerusalem, the Upper City here, the western part. Remember, this is the south wall, this is the east side, this is south, so this is west, so on the western Upper City. Somewhere here in the rich areas would have been the house of Caiaphas, the high priest. I'm going to show you some examples, some pictures from places scholars think it might have been, but that's one of the more uncertain places. So Jesus during these last hours was a little bit back and forth here. And then, of course, he died on Golgotha, which is outside the city walls here. So I just really like this this illustration. Another good one is, I'll open the table of contents again to the ESV Study Bible. If we go down to John, read the parallel story in John 18. There is a nice illustration here as well. So, Garden of Gethsemane here, on the eastern side of the temple, at the Kedron Valley, at the foot of the Mount of Olives. Palace of Herod the Great, probably where Pontius Pilate was. Golgotha here outside. So we can also, if you want to check the other Gospels, they each have an illustration of Jesus' last days. Let's see here in the Markan version. Mark has a lot of details of the back and forth. So here the illustration in the ESV Study Bible on Mark 14, Garden of Gethsemane 1, Palace of the High Priest. Nobody really knows where that is. It's just in this western Upper City. Somebody dug out a big house that was a lot further to the west. Maybe it would have been here. Nobody really knows. So back and forth. All right, isn't this nice little overview? There are different resources in the Logos. Let's find some else for you. Maybe I should open the Bible so we can follow along again. Let's go to Luke 22 from verse 39. Luke 22:39. So Jesus prays on the Mount of Olives, at the foot of Mount Olives in the Gethsemane garden. All right, we have that here. I showed you where that was, on the eastern side of the temple, across the Kidron Valley. Then Jesus was arrested in the garden, and he is taken to the high priest, the house of Caiaphas. I mentioned to you that some archaeologists believe they have dug out a house that might have been the house of Annas and Caiaphas. In the Bible and Spade, an archaeological journal from 1991, there is an article called "The House of Annas and Caiaphas?" ? This is the house they've been digging out. So this is kind of a drawing of what they think it looked like. A lot of rooms, bigger and smaller. There are some mikvahs in here for ritual baths. And then in the middle is a big courtyard, and that would have been open up to the sky. So this would have been, if this was the house of Caiaphas, the high priest. We don't know for sure, but it's one possibility. It was a fairly big mansion they dug out. This courtyard is where Peter would have been warming his hands. Passover is in the springtime, so it's fairly cooler in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is up on the hill. It's a little bit higher up. So up in the hills, springtime, not completely warm. When night comes, it gets colder, and he was warming himself by the fire. And then he famously denied Jesus. "No, I'm not one of him. I'm not his disciple." So this courtyard would have been open. People could look up to the sky from here, but the other rooms had roof over. And so in one of the rooms, maybe this larger room here, would have been the interview with Caiaphas the high priest, if this was the house of Caiaphas. We don't know for sure. One of the things we are uncertain about when it comes to the history. In the beginning of chapter 23, end of chapter 22, he's taken to the council, to the Sanhedrin. If you go to your library, well, you can do several things. You can, of course, always go to Tools, Factbook, and type in Sanhedrin. Then you will get some information, some images, some dictionary articles, and you can read more about them. One image I like a lot about the Sanhedrin is if you go to the library, type in Logos Bible Software Infographics. Infographics might be enough. So if you open up this infographics book resource, and then you have on the left hand side you have a long table of contents. If you don't see the table of contents, just click on the book, the icon up here, make sure show table of contents is selected, and then in the long list, which is alphabetical, you go down to the S for Sanhedrin. Here you will have a picture of it. If I now open it in a floating window, so it gets a little bit bigger, you will see that the room wasn't terribly big. They were sitting all quite tight. It was made up of Pharisees and Sadducees, probably a bit more Sadducees, but the two parties were sometimes fighting vigorously for different ideas. You remember the story of Paul in the book of Acts when he was on trial in this room in the Sanhedrin. Paul said, "I am a Pharisee, and I stand here on trial because I believe in the resurrection from the dead." And then all the Pharisees who also believed in the resurrection, contra the Sadducees who did not, the Pharisees found no fault with Paul because he was one of them. He was a Pharisee. He was trained by Pharisees and at the feet of Gamaliel. So the Sanhedrin, it's the supreme court and the parliament, legislative system. The Romans gave the Jews a certain amount of autonomy over some national and religious issues, and that took place, those discussions, in here. And if there was some important criminal, they came on trial here. Sanhedrin. Now, where exactly was it? Well, it was in the temple area. You see this little colored box here? That might have been the chamber. So it's not that big compared to the big temple complex. You have the women's courtyard out here. They would meet in the room here. So, Logos Bible Software Infographics. You have the Sanhedrin, the Jewish parliament and high court where Jesus was put on trial. At the end of Luke 22. Chapter 23, Jesus comes in front of Pilate. And we showed you that. And then he was taken from Pilate to Herod, and then back again to Pilate. So Herod's palace, if you want some picture of that, go to your library again and type in bibleplaces.com. It should be in all the SDA packages. So make sure you see the table of contents. If you don't have it, click on the book icon and select Show Table of Contents. And then down here, well, you can do Temple Mount from the east. So on the other side, I mean, this is a modern reconstruction of Jerusalem at the time of Jesus. You have the temple here, the western upper city over here. Let's see if we can find Herod's palace. So we just scroll up to Herod's palace. So here we are. It's in the western part of the city. We have the temple in the background over there, over towards the east. So you have some infographics, some drawings, and you have some pictures, various kind in Logos. And I hope this is enough to give you an overview of the political situation at the time of Jesus. Jesus does all this back and forth between the different leaders because it was a complex situation at the time of his death. So we asked the question earlier, what did Jesus do in front of Herod if Herod Antipas was in charge of not Judea but Galilee? And the answer is probably Galilee. Jesus was a citizen of Galilee, if you wish. He was a citizen of Herod Antipas' kingdom. Since Jesus had grown up in Galilee and did most of his ministry there. So as a Galilean, Jesus would naturally fall under the jurisdiction of Herod Antipas. That's the best answer. Another reason might also have been that since Judea and Jerusalem was directly under the Romans and not under any Jewish king, since this was a religious matter, is this Jesus a Jewish Messiah? Is he what kind of religious beliefs does he have? Who does he think he is? Is he a threat or not? Since there was some religion involved here and beliefs, Pontius Pilate wanted to make sure that we got the Jews engaged in his trial. And since there was no Jewish king of Judea, the Herod Antipas would be the closest and the biggest and strongest king of the Jews there was as king of Galilee. So that might also have been a reason why Herod Antipas got involved, even though technically he was not in charge of Jerusalem. But Jesus would have fallen under his jurisdiction anyway. And it's back to Pontius Pilate again, and he's crucified outside the city walls. So a pretty complex political situation. I hope this little video helped you. This was the last of my videos in this quarter, but I plan to make more Logos videos and other videos about the New Testament in the times to come. So if you want to get notifications of future videos I post on YouTube, please, here on YouTube, just go to my channel, click on Reimar Vettner, and you can subscribe to my channel so you will get updates of new videos I put out. I have recorded and I will put out fairly quickly, probably even today. Should be out when you watch this, another video about the content of the different SDA packages. Some of you might have got one of the lower SDA packages, maybe from your conference or union, if you're a pastor, or you bought an SDA package or some kind of other Logos package and you want to upgrade maybe to a bigger one. I've made a video about the most important resources in SDA Silver, SDA Gold, SDA Platinum. Gold and Platinum has just been released, and so I'm going through what are some of the most important books you will get in the bigger packages, and so you can evaluate for yourself if it's worth investing in a larger library of books in Logos. So other videos I make, it will be posted here on my channel. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel so you can get the updates. And if you go to vettner.com, my blog, you can also hear free videos. You can also here subscribe to my email newsletter, so you will get an email from me when I make a new video, or if I post something else on my blog. I have some papers here. I have a paper about Jesus' use of Daniel. My wife has different things about the Psalms, Luke, Acts, ordination, trumpet of Revelation, my article on historicism, and so on. So if you want to get some of my other videos, articles, go to vettner.com, and you might want to sign up for my email newsletter there. Thank you so much for following my videos this quarter. I hope you have learned how to use Logos a little bit better, and that you have got some insights on the Gospel of Luke this quarter. My main concern is that we make the Sabbath School a lot more Bible focused. What's happening in a lot of Sabbath schools is that the teacher is teaching from the lesson, and everybody just talking from memory. All the knowledge we have of theology and all kinds of topics, we're just talking for half an hour, on things we know, and we sometimes hardly ever open the Bible and study it afresh. We don't dig into the Word of God together in discussions. And teachers sometimes come without a lot more knowledge other than the simple things they can find in the Sabbath School quarterly. We need more Bible in our Sabbath schools, and we need more solid learning. It's a school. We're supposed to learn something every week when we go to Sabbath School. So I hope that you will use Logos to dig into the Word of God and come prepared and be a good teacher, and that together we can make a Bible revival in the Adventist Church. Let's once again make Adventism into a movement of the book where we learn a lot about the Bible together. My name is Reimar Vettner, and I wish you all the best of blessings.